Hey guys, it's Courtney. Before I jump into this video, I am in the editing phase now, and I realized that this video is way too long, so we are going to be breaking it up into two pieces. So just be sure to go ahead and watch out for the second video, which I will link down below once it's posted. The first video will be about the two types of soulmates that are generally more optimistic, and then the next two will be about more of kind of like the difficult aspects in relationships and more difficult types of soulmates. So make sure you stay tuned for that, and I hope you guys enjoy the video. Bye. Hey guys, this is Courtney from Willow's Bloom, and I am here today to discuss one of my favorite topics in astrology, which is relationships. And if you don't know about relationship astrology, basically what we do is we take two charts, one for you, one for your partner or a family member or whoever you are in a loving relationship with of some nature, and we overlay them. So one goes on the inside, one goes on the outside, and we start to look at your synastry, which is basically the ways that the planets speak to each other. And it helps define the way that the relationship unfolds for you. It also can talk a lot about the purpose of the relationship, the history or the karma. And when I say history, I mean past life history of the relationship. And it can really show you kind of what it will do to you and how it will impact you on a bigger soul level. So in today's video, I'm going to be covering 4 different types of relationship styles, and I'm going to talk about what each of these mean, what astrological correlations you can look for if you're wanting to know about the synastry alignments. If you don't know how to read that and that's really confusing for you, because I'm not going to go very into detail for beginners, then you can book a reading with me. I'll link a synastry reading down below. But otherwise, you can kind of toy around and try to figure some of this out on your own. And I'll go over basically the correlations to each of these things. However, please keep in mind that it's very rare for a relationship to fall in one specific category. Often we will have relationships that kind of blend together across at least 2 categories, if not more. So just kind of keep that in mind, and maybe you can ask yourself, what was the purpose of that relationship and what benefit did I get basically from this person in my life? So before I kind of dive into this, I wanted to start off by mentioning more of my theory behind how relationships come into play, especially with astrology. So first of all, I think that people come into our lives for our ultimate soul growth in some capacity, and we will see that through the different lenses of the types of relationships that I'll discuss today. So we are here to grow, and that can often mean that we are uncomfortable through that process. Not all relationships are just supposed to be easy and smooth. And so if we can kind of go into relationships knowing that we're meant to be challenged in some way, and that's normal, then that can be a really healthy viewpoint. Another thing I wanted to add is that I see relationships as a chemical reaction. Each individual brings their own unique chemistry, their own chemicals, I guess. And once they come together with somebody else's, that creates a new compound. It creates something that doesn't exist, and maybe that will have a really spicy kind of fiery reaction, and these people can have sexual tension or anger between each other, or it could have no reaction at all, and it could kind of be, you know, oil and water where things separate and they don't actually combine. And so if we can kind of think about relationships more as a chemical reaction, I think it's helpful, because it's not always so much about each individual person and the relationship as much as it is about how you change as a result of who you are with. And I think this is important to note, because you can't expect yourself to be the same in every type of relationship. You can radically change as a person when you are put with a different kind of energy and chemistry. And so we can't expect our charts to perform in the same way that they normally do when in contact with an external stimulus, aka someone else's chart. We see other facets of ourselves come to life, maybe things that we tend to not usually have in our day-to-day day-to-day lives, for the better or for the worse. And so picking the right person and the way that they make you feel or the way that they chemically react with you is really, really important, because sometimes it's not so much about you needing to change. It's just about that not being the right combination, or maybe it is the right combination and it's really helping you grow as a person. So let's talk about it. Let's get into the 4 types of soulmate energies. And let me just preface the whole idea of soulmates by saying that I think my belief is that we have many different types of soulmates. I don't think that we have one. Maybe some of us do have a primary soulmate. But I mean, you can see in the birth chart when people are going to have multiple marriages, or when they're more likely to have, a desire for more rather than just having a kind of single devoted relationship. So I'm taking soulmates as many different people in our lives that we were meant to link up with to learn and grow as a soul, and they become our mate for a period of time, and then maybe they don't always stay. Okay, so these are all the different types of soulmates. So number 1, we have learning soulmates. Number 2, we have nurturing soulmates. Number 3, we have karmic soulmates. And then number 4, we have not necessarily a soulmate per se, but the idea of a triangulated relationship. So let's get into what all of these mean and their astrological correlations or significations. Okay, starting off with our learning soulmates. So I really see these as individuals that come into our lives to help us learn and grow. And that means they specifically will embody characteristics and traits and signs that we have trouble fully integrating into our psyche, or that we somehow lack. And I don't mean that we actually lack it, but it's usually something maybe not represented in our childhood. It doesn't come as easily or as naturally to us. And so learning soulmates, they prompt us to grow through a little bit of that kind of push. So people will react differently towards this nudge, towards this growth. Some people will embrace it. Some people are very interested in personal growth. Some people are attracted to people who are different than them, who can offer, different perspectives that they can learn from and become more of a whole person as a result of that relationship. Other people might become triggered by this. Other people might really want relationships to represent somebody who's more similar to them. So if you have a lot of Aries in the chart, especially, Venus and Aries in particular, you might want a partner who's more similar to you, and the learning soulmate might feel just a little bit too uncomfortable. Whereas if you have Venus in Pisces, for example, there's usually a lot more wiggle room and more understanding and compassion for these differences, or if you have, a really prominent Jupiter in your chart, you might be somebody who is attracted to people who are quite different. Venus in Sagittarius, for example, you're going to have an eye for people who are foreign, who maybe speak another language, who have different skill sets, and that entices you because you know that when you come in contact with that person, again, you become more whole. And so learning soulmates really give us the opportunity to embody the qualities that we lack or that we repress, or that oppose our natural innate tendencies in some way. They bring out the need for learning, cooperation, communication, and integration. So these are things that are not naturally going to just be a part of us just by being around this person. I mean, in some ways, I guess they could, because they're kind of, if we see our psyche playing out externally as well, it's like they kind of complete parts of the psyche that might need completing. But ultimately, it's more of an efforting. Like, I have to intentionally talk about things that come up that we disagree with. Maybe we like to have different social schedules. For example, maybe I'm more introverted, you're more extroverted. Maybe you have more energy and I have less energy. For example, that would be Aries and Pisces. There are signs right next to each other. They have very different forms of energy management. So these are going to be people in your life who, again, ask you to really look at how you live your life and if you can make some kind of compromise, or if you can at the very least understand that person and live your relationship in a way in which you are benefiting from the idea of slowing down if you have lots of Aries when it suits you and when it would benefit your life. And then be living in your fast-paced energy and pull your partner up to more fast-paced energy when that would suit them. So I think the idea of compromise is important here in a way that it doesn't undercut your natural needs, because there's a way to compromise that can still fit your energy and still fit your lifestyle and actually benefit you. So you can spot a learning partner by noticing any distinct shifts in your personality, in your life, and in your wisdom after being with this person. So you can notice how you start speaking another language, you have another hobby you've never tried before. And at the very least, when you're with that person, maybe it shifts you and that remains after, maybe not. But when you're with that person, you start to notice that you might pick up on some other things that you hadn't really considered or you hadn't naturally gravitated towards. There are going to be people who will naturally kind of pick up on partners' tendencies because of their mirroring nature. And this is not necessarily somebody who is experiencing a learning soulmate if you have a tendency to mirror every partner that you're with. You know what I mean? So this would be people who have very strong Venus and Libra energy, and maybe for some people who have difficulties with boundaries, so maybe strong Pisces and Neptune in the chart, Saturn retrograde, that type of thing, you might already kind of naturally just mold and adapt to the partnership, and that wouldn't necessarily indicate a learning soulmate in particular. You're really going to have to look for these examples in the chart and ask yourself, do I just do this with every person that I'm with, or is this something that I'm actually growing from as a person and challenging the way that I normally do things? So these relationships are going to be quite dynamic, and they're going to have their challenges. Some people are going to, again, enjoy that challenge, and other people are going to shy away from that challenge. And you kind of have to ask, like, what person am I? Am I somebody who wants that friction, or does that really do me a disservice? And you can do whatever it is that you want to do. You can choose whatever kind of partner you want to choose. So this doesn't, just because you're learning and you're growing and you're evolving together, does not indicate that the relationship will last forever. Those are mainly indicated by just a lot of elements of the chart that are more so compatible. So I'm not going to go super into this. I'll probably do a whole other video about this, like what makes somebody stay together. But just very briefly, we typically want to see some compatibility between the moons or the suns of the individuals, and you definitely want to see some type of Saturn connection, especially like Saturn on the sun or Saturn on the ascendant, that type of thing. But regardless, if you don't have these important Saturn contexts, the relationship might help you learn and grow for a specific period or phase of your life. Maybe they're here to come and teach you a certain lesson around how to maybe step up more of a leader, as a leader, if you're someone who's more behind the scenes, or maybe there's somebody who spurs you to communicate better in the relationship because you've always kind of held your feelings within. So you'll kind of see based off of, you know, where the charts align, how that person is meant to help you grow. Okay, so when we're looking at signatures for this, I'm just going to kind of read this because it's too hard for me to know it from, you know, just say it out loud from my brain. Okay, so we're looking for opposing, squaring, or quincunx signs or personal planets. So the reason for this, these are going to be parts of the relationship that are in either a direct opposition or in some kind of contrast or misunderstanding with. The reason why we need to have these tense aspects is because these are going to be, again, parts of the self that when we see them reflected back to us, those are going to be somewhat unfamiliar, or they're going to be in direct contrast to what we prefer. And this will really make you more open-minded. It kind of forces you to see the whole picture. It forces you to look at the complete opposite end of the spectrum. So for example, if I have, you know, my moon in, let's say if I have my moon in Virgo and someone has their moon in Pisces, maybe the way that we take care of our health and our bodies and our typical kind of habitual behaviors are really different. The moon in Virgo person is going to be much more regimented. They're going to be more maybe particular or have some type of desire for a little bit more control over their bodies or their habits. They could tend to be a little bit more anxious and just have typically a less desire to go with the flow. Whereas somebody with the moon in Pisces will have a lot more of that flow tendency, and they might eat more intuitively and have not as strict of a schedule. And so when they go about cohabitating, they're going to have really opposite approaches, but maybe the moon in Virgo person might be a little too regimented, where moon in Pisces person might be, not regimented enough, and they can blend together and find this beautiful, happy medium if they start to learn ways in which they can adopt that other person's perspective about how to live life. And that doesn't mean changing your nature, but it does mean absorbing more of the picture of what are the benefits of having flow, what are the benefits of having regimented structure. And so oppositions, squares, and quincunxes of signs and planets will help the person do that. So it really depends on what the planets are, where the houses are, what the signs are, to kind of have more details and information about how this would come to life on a personal level. So the second thing is to have the Jupiter or North Node aspecting another person's personal planets. So personal planets, Sun, Moon, Mars, Mercury, and Venus, those are going to describe the personality. That's why they're personal planets. They're going to describe the body, the character, the drives, the tendencies, all of those things. And so when Jupiter, a planet of growth, and the North Node, a point of the moon that is, or a calculated point that is, also associated with growth and evolution, when these come in contact with somebody's personal planet, it's almost like that person that you're with is their soul, and the way that they have, the way that they are evolving, the way that they are growing is encouraging you to grow as well. So it's just bringing out more of the positive sides, typically, of your whatever that personal planet is. So for example, let's say you have a Jupiter moon conjunction. The moon is so important in relationships, which is why I use this often in examples, because the moon is our inner child. It's who we are behind closed doors. It's our habits. It's our history of what made us who we are. And so when we have, for example, our partner's Jupiter on our moon, it will bring out this sense of emotional optimism, feeling like we can be more of ourselves. We can feel really comfortable, but yet push outside of our comfort zone at the same time. So it's growth that is encouraged from a positive perspective. And I think that's the case with learning soulmates, is they challenge us in a positive way. So we're going to get into karmic soulmates. They tend to challenge us in a negative way. And that's a really key difference here, because the learning soulmates help us hit our growth edge and become better people as a result of that relationship, a more whole person. And so with that Jupiter on a moon, for example, in synastry, that kind of conjunction is again going to help that individual dare to maybe express more vulnerably, open up emotionally, desire new things, strive for new things in life, especially if it also aspects the sun or the Mars of the individual. So you can really start to see how that soul pushes you to evolve by the way that they are also naturally evolving. Another one is having the reversed nodes. So for example, if I have a Sagittarius North node, which I do, and somebody else has a Sagittarius South node, basically this indicates that they are going to naturally embody qualities and traits that I am moving towards as a soul. So wherever we have our South node is something that we've got on lockdown. We are really secure within that energy. Like we have lived a past life already within that energy. So with a Gemini South Node, I have already lived out my Gemini energy. I know how to communicate. I know how to ask questions. I know how to be curious. All of the kind of Gemini qualities, for example. And maybe that's something I don't really need to encourage more of in myself. But if I met up with a partner who has a Gemini North Node, maybe that person will struggle to have that level of curiosity or open-mindedness. Maybe they have more of a specific belief system that they've spent their life adhering to. And me coming into their life, representing somebody who is maybe more adaptable and has a more malleable mind, maybe that will help them start to see, maybe I can ask more questions, and maybe I don't have all the answers. And if they are open and receptive to learning from me and growing from me, that is when they would start to benefit from having the same North Node as my South Node. So that's what that means. The fourth one is to have positive Chiron or Pluto aspects. So these are not going to be all of the examples of synastry aspects. There are so many, but these are going to be some core ones that I would look for and that would really indicate to me the potential for growth and healing. So Chiron and Pluto tend to be a little bit more intense of, asteroids and planets. Chiron in particular, I see time and time and time again in my synastry readings, making strong aspects to the other person's natal Venus. And this doesn't even usually have to be a positive aspect. I will often see like Chiron square Venus, Chiron trine Venus, Chiron conjunct Venus when somebody has a relationship, a romantic relationship in particular. So I will say though that the negative or the challenging aspects like squares, oppositions, sometimes quincunxes with Chiron to personal planets, especially to Venus, are going to have a little bit more of a challenging effect. But the positive aspects with Chiron, it really indicates that we see our past life wounding being healed within the relationship, or we have the potential for that to happen. And we have the potential for our partner to really see and understand that wounded inner child within us. And this is so important in relationships, and why I keep seeing Chiron in aspect to Venus again and again and again, because we are always looking for partnerships that resemble our family dynamics, our relationship with our parents, or the relationships that our parents have with each other. And we play that role out again. And ultimately, we're trying to do that in our psyche to try to make changes to better or heal those circumstances that we encountered as a child. So if we recreate it, but this time solve it or improve it, it's almost like satisfying for our brain. So it's a very unconscious kind of thing that we're pulled towards. So when we have Chiron in a positive aspect to a personal planet, especially Venus, we're going to feel like we are accomplishing that goal. We're feeling like we're actually healing some of those wounds that we have carried over, and that we are resolving that and not having to repeat those things, which is very much a learning process. The other one is positive Pluto aspects. So Pluto is a planet that challenges us to transform, to grow and evolve, particularly often through situations that challenge our power. So we become more resilient, and we rise above like a phoenix through the ashes after challenging experiences that and we feel more empowered as a result of those challenges that we've faced. So Pluto in general, again, has to deal with that, this idea of death and rebirth, often loss, letting things go to become lighter and stronger within ourselves and more often spiritually aware. And so Pluto, when making a positive aspect to a personal planet, can indicate the potential for transformation that's facilitated by this partner. So they might help us look at deep aspects of the self and shadow aspects of the self that we've been scared to look at. They might help us let go of really toxic patterns or things that we have repressed within our own psyche that we've been unable to do on our own. And so they can kind of draw those things out in a way that's gentle when it's a positive aspect, in a way that's encouraged. And I want to say that we don't want all positive aspects in a synastry chart. We want negative aspects because that element of tension will provide the potential for a lot of growth. And we saw that in the first example. But when we have a really challenging planet like Pluto or Chiron, for example, we don't necessarily, it's not that we don't necessarily benefit from the negative aspects, we still do, but sometimes it can be so triggering that it can be harder to benefit from those circumstances. And sometimes we can just become more hurt by the way that our charts are aspecting. So when you have a difficult planet, you usually want a more positive aspect because it will still already bring challenges into the dynamic that the positive aspects can help resolve more easily. So that is the learning soulmates portion. Let's go ahead and move on to the nurturing soulmates. All right, now let's go ahead and talk about nurturing soulmates. And just remember, quick recap, we can have soulmates that overlap or relationships that overlap with different different categories that I'm listing out today. So okay, a nurturing soulmate is going to be somebody who comes into your life to offer some type of comfort or solace. They are going to be often coming into our lives after we have gone through probably too much heartache or too much challenge or difficulty. And so the universe brings this person into our life and they're like, okay, we see that you have gotten out of this really difficult cycle. This person is going to come and offer you a feeling of home, a feeling of being safe and comforted and starting to heal you. So a nurturing soulmate is going to be someone who does just that, somebody who has a harmonious energy with yours that is going to feel nurturing, that is going to feel uplifting, because it's almost like the universe knows when we've had too much, where we're reaching some place of soul level exhaustion and where we need extra support from somebody where we don't have to do a bunch of learning and growing and pushing and friction. It's like we can just rest and become restored and believe more in humanity again, believe more in love again. And I have personally had a relationship like this before, and it doesn't mean that the relationship is something that's going to stay. It doesn't mean that it's your person, because it can be very important for a period of your life. But it does play a significant role in your ability to kind of get back up on your feet. And it doesn't have to be after a difficult time necessarily, but usually there's a feeling of like your soul needs more support. And so that is when a nurturing soulmate comes in, and that could be for any type of reason in your life in general. So typically what I see for nurturing soulmates is I believe they are from the same soul family. So these are going to be people who really have your kind of same energetic imprint. They will have, connections between your charts that are very natural, that are very easy. They don't require a lot of energy to grasp and to understand that other person and their perspective. You kind of just agree, you kind of just match up and align with stuff, and things flow really easily. Nurturing soulmates can come in any type of relationships. I think that these are really common in people's lives as friendships. Usually when there's not too much challenge or friction, at least for me personally, those are the people that I end up being friends with. I do want my friends to be honest with me, but at the same time, I don't want that to be something that I have to work hard towards. I want it to be very natural. And so a lot of our friendships are going to be that same soul family bond or those nurturing relationships. So in general, there's going to be a flow in the relationship and a natural gravitational pull to the other person. So you'll be interested in them, intrigued by them, align with them. All of those things tend to be very easy. So they're not here to challenge you. They don't have to push you. These can also be relationships that can come from past lives. So that's why I think that they are from the same soul family. They can be people that we have reincarnated with over many generations, or over many lives. And so we will again kind of fit like a hand into a glove in a relationship with that person. We might even have the feeling that we've known them before or have this instant kind of familiarity to them. Generally, I feel like these relationships will serve a specific purpose to get us back up on our feet or to heal us. And that could look different for different people. If we have been wounded our entire life, we might settle into a nurturing soulmate relationship for the rest of our life, for example. If we have gone through a kind of rough patch for a year or two and we've had a number of losses or a karmic relationship that really shattered our confidence, or our nervous system is completely dysregulated because we feel like we're unsafe, there's something happening, we might find a nurturing soulmate land in our lap, soon after that for a couple of years until we feel differently. And that's kind of what happened to me. So these relationships don't always stick around, because usually once they have served that purpose and you're ready to evolve in a new way, then the relationship might leave your life. If you have a combination of factors where you have a learning relationship and a nurturing relationship together, along with some Saturn connections in the chart, this to me would be the ideal relationship. You have some factors that are really harmonious, some that push you to grow, a little bit of friction that is necessary to keep evolving as a soul, but then also factors like Saturn that help you want to work on the relationship and stick with it. And again, that to me would be the ideal type of connection. If you have mostly just nurturing energy, it doesn't, like, you need some friction. You need something to keep sinking your teeth into, unless you are, again, so wounded that you can't even keep your head above water, then you really will still need that kind of person. So these are going to be people who typically are going to help you stay in your comfort zone, because that's where healing happens. You're not trying to always learn and grow and do more, because if you're wounded, you need to stay in that comfort zone. You need to be home. You need to be in an area of safety and protection from people who really understand you. Okay, so there are going to be a few signatures for this. So, for example, positive Sun, Moon, Venus, and Jupiter aspects, especially to other people's personal planets or sitting on people's angles. So, for example, I had an old partner who had his Venus right on my ascendant, and it was like we were best friends. We pretty much never fought. We really didn't have any issues. Things just kind of flowed. They were really easy. They were fun. But then it got to a point in the relationship where I was ready for something more. I wanted to grow. I wanted to travel. I wanted to expand. And that relationship was really there as this element of bringing some more soothing and trusting back into my life after a difficult partnership a year before that. And so it wasn't really meant to keep up with me on that speed. So it was beautiful for what it was. And so we can see that, especially with like Sun, Moon, and Venus aspects, Jupiter can bring really positive aspects as well, but Jupiter has a little bit more of a tendency to grow. So Venus has a very soothing friendship quality. If we have, very positive aspects with the Sun and Moon, it's like they're so familiar to us. We really feel like we connect with them. They remind us of family, of things that are from our past, but in a positive way. And they feel like they are mirroring us or reflecting our nature in some capacity. So really it has that familiar of comfort, familiarity, and harmony. Another signature would be the ruler of the ascendant, which is your rising sign, or your descendant, which is your 7th house cusp. So the planet that's in charge of either of those houses, that is going to be conjunct the other person's ascendant or descendant ruler, or on an angle. So let's say, for example, I'm a Virgo rising. So one of my most important planets is Mercury. Mercury is going to describe me. This is the planet that rules Virgo. It's going to describe my nature, my appearance, how I make decisions, all of those things. So if my Mercury is on my partner's, let's say, moon, and my partner has a Cancer descendant or Cancer 7th house cusp, the moon is going to be the ruler of their 7th house of relationships. So if my Mercury is on his Cancer, or on his moon in Cancer, or moon wherever, if my Mercury is on his moon, then we're going to have this sense of completion and familiarity and comfort, because the way I express myself aligns with what he's looking for in a relationship. And this could go vice versa. It could be both of our ascendant rulers are the same. We both express ourselves the same. Both of our descendant rulers are conjunct. So kind of what we're wanting in relationship both aligns with one another. Or again, swapping those two. Or this could be on an angle. So on the first house cusp, on the ascendant, on the 10th house, on the 4th house, on the 7th house. Those angles in particular are important. And so when you have, the ascendant ruler or descendant ruler aligning with with the angles of that other person's chart, it's going to really indicate, again, that sense of familiarity. That person embodies that in some area of your life, of their life, and you're going to bring it out within them. So it's, again, a harmonious nature. So I hope that made sense. I know it's kind of a lot when you can't see the charts, but I hope that is clicking for you guys. Also, if we are looking at positive planets like the sun, Jupiter, Mercury, the moon, Venus in the 7th and the other person's 7th house. So as I mentioned, the 7th house is the relationship house. So if your partner has a Pisces descendant, like I do, for example, if I am dating somebody who has their sun in Pisces, they are going to naturally embody qualities that I'm looking for in a relationship. And so it's going to fit really, really nicely into my life. If they have their Venus there, they are going to give love and affection in a way that I desire from a partner. So it's, again, just this clicking, this harmonious energy of what I'm searching for, you naturally have. And it really helps us feel like we are just having more joy in the area of relationships and more ease. Nodal connections to personal planets, or the ascendant or descendant, can indicate past life connections, especially the south node. However, the south node tends to grow stagnant over time or drain our energy. So just kind of keep in mind that even if you have that connection, it doesn't mean that this is going to last forever. It doesn't mean that it's best for you to have this last forever. I had a friend who had Venus on my south node, or I think it was the opposite way. It was the opposite way. My Venus was on her south node. And that relationship felt like family, and then it was there no more. And so I think these relationships really serve their purpose. And, there is that strong connection while the relationship is in action. The last one is having a personal planet connected to the other person's sun or moon midpoint, especially a conjunction. So I don't know how much I want to get into this because it's a little bit more advanced. But basically, there's something in astrology called midpoints, which is going to take the average of two planets. And our personal sun and moon midpoint is kind of like the way that we merge our external and our internal reality and self into a union. It's like a marriage or a union of the self, wherever this midpoint lies. And so it's often triggered or, again, activated in a synastry chart or in transits when somebody is getting married or when somebody feels like they found their soulmate of some sort. And so if you have like your partner's sun on your sun moon midpoint, or your partner's Venus on your sun moon midpoint, this is going to indicate that sense of connection here, where the way that you come into union with yourself is also being represented by that person and their energy. And it's a nice collaboration. It combines well. It's a harmonious nature. And so this is something else that we can look for.